Hi there, Tim Poole here from Gambling Insider. I'm with John Connelly, Global CEO of Interblock. Hi, John, and can you tell us about your wonderful backdrop there?
Well, yeah, that's a 10-year initiative. Nothing goes too easy these days, but I've been trying to catch a marlin for quite some time, and that's fresh from Hawaii, pre-COVID. So I had to bring it back with me. It took me so long to catch one. So yeah.
No, fantastic. I'm glad it's there. It should be eye catching, but of course we've got plenty to discuss, which is going to be of interest to our viewers as well. It's great to catch up with you once again. How has 2021 been treating yourself and Interblock?
Well, I think it goes without saying, it was obviously a challenging year for a lot of the industry. However, the silver lining is we came out of COVID strong, at least from a North American perspective. I mean, when you talk globally, unfortunately, Europe is going through another round or surge of cases, and concerned about that. Certain countries shutting down again, and Asia is still struggling. Another surge going on there. The bright spot is North America. Although we are seeing more cases, the numbers out of the gaming sector post-COVID were some of the highest we've ever seen in the history of gaming, in certain regions. So that was very helpful, I think, to the operators and to the suppliers alike. And then as a result of COVID, you can imagine that, the online proliferation of sports betting and online gaming has really taken off in North America, as it has historically in Europe and other parts of the world. Relative to Interblock, it's been a little bit of a surprise for us as to the momentum we experienced during COVID and post-COVID, relative to electronic table games. It's been a catalyst of growth, more than we would have ever expected. And what's, I think, the biggest surprise to me, at least, is that when we came out of COVID and the casino industry opened back up, and live table gaming opened back up, I thought perhaps we'd see a little bit of a lull, because there was additional supply offered to the player base, and that hasn't happened. The momentum continues to grow at rates, if not even higher than just post or during COVID and post-COVID. So it definitely seemed to be a paradigm shift for our company.
Yeah, you mentioned North America. Obviously, billions coming out of Nevada pretty much every month, and New Jersey, billions in terms of sportsbook handle, and a lot of that online, which is something else you mentioned. Focusing on North America, how do you review G2E for your company? And you had quite an eye-catching invitation-only stand, as I understand. How did that perform?
Yeah, I mean, G2E this year, it was definitely not as well attended as years past. However, the caliber of people that attended was, I think, the best ever. People decision makers, owners, executives, I think, because it had been a couple of years and really wanted to stay in touch with what new innovations were out there, how innovation could help their businesses, attended. Just they tended not to bring as many, I would say, employees or different categories of employees that they historically would have. But from our standpoint, it was a tremendous show. And then obviously the invitation only, we do that, and we'll continue to do that, just because we're unfortunately, due to our innovation, a target of people trying to copy. And we work very hard to try to stay market leader and innovate with our team, and provide the industry with cutting edge ideas and concepts, ways to improve the performance of their casino floors. And we want to protect that. So the reaction was actually quite good. It was more exclusive environment inside. People felt very important. You knew when someone was in the booth that they were meant to be there, and you could focus your attention accordingly. So we enjoyed it.
Sure, an interesting point to make, and certainly kind of making a stand on that with, if it's a pun of sorts, with the exclusive stand itself. We mentioned ICE briefly before we jumped on this call. Assuming the show goes ahead, what are kind of your and Interblock's plans for that show?
Yeah, I think it's as in years past, ICE will be very similar to the Vegas show, G2E, but will allow our European partners and customers, operators, to to experience and see some of the newest technology hands-on, especially this year, considering a lot of people did not travel internationally and were unable to travel. So this is our way of being able to take really what we had at G2E and bring it over to Europe and do the same, the same launch, the same introductions of very similar products and technology.
Yeah, sure. And naturally, I mean, somewhat kicks off 2021. Obviously, it's in February, late January. As we round off 2021 and head into 2022, I'm not sure which year I said earlier, but 2022 is the one we're going into. What do you see as kind of the key trends to watch out for when it comes to electronic table games and land-based casino more generally?
Yeah, it's I'll tell you, there's just by the month right now, there's just such momentum, and we're learning a tremendous amount, both domestically in the North American markets and internationally, as a result of COVID, and player perceptions of table games. And what I see happening is I see now a correlation between the online world and the traditional casinos themselves, and that bridge happening. I think due to acquisitions and mergers, we've experienced that somewhat in Europe historically, but I think North America is going to be to a much larger extent, where we have the traditional land operators who are also in the online space start to really create a unified approach to content and cross-marketing promotions from a player perspective that we haven't seen before, at least in certain regions. So I think that's going to be something very interesting and fun to watch in 2022. Relative to Interblock and ETGs, we continue to, see, as I mentioned earlier, a demographic split. The fact that an electronic table game, caters to many different types of players, which we didn't know 5 years ago. We've learned a lot that there's one demographic that prefers more of a social aspect. And the best analogy I use now is, casinos, the traditional land-based casinos have such an advantage over online casinos, such an advantage, and how to utilize that infrastructure to drive value. And, they have spas, they have shows, shopping, restaurants. And whereas an industry we haven't been able to truly figure out is when someone does enter a casino, or we pull someone online into that beautiful infrastructure and offering, how to get a lot of those people to step onto the casino floor. And what we're finding is that the stadium concept from Interblock is a place that, whether it be a couple or a group of friends, can go and conjugate and remain social at an end of an evening or during the day. Whereas historically, a lot of casino technology and casino environments are solitary in nature, whether it be a slot machine or even table games. You tend not to ever find 3 or 4 seats where you can sit together with your friends. And so we found that, the more social we make electronic table games in various distribution methods, whether it be a stadium or a standalone seat, a single seat, and putting a love seat in front of it, has really resonated with the player base. So I see 2022 really as now the industry is ready to talk about sections of a floor, labor issues that resonate in the United States, and obviously internationally, the ability of electronic table game to reduce operating expenses, and address those labor shortages, and the ability of technology to drive more handle and hold. It seems like a natural progression we're going to see into 22, that the expansion of a casino floor from an electronic technology perspective is going to grow, especially when under 2% of the floor currently in North America are electronic table games. So it's really at its infancy. So excited about the future.
I think this is a similar topic. In our recent Gaming America magazine, you said you see the stakes as never being higher for the traditional land-based segment. I mean, is what you're talking about just now? Is that kind of what you meant? And if there's other things at play, kind of, can you tell us more about exactly what you meant there?
Well, what I meant was, with the proliferation of at least again, in parts of the world with online gaming, sports betting, and really you can feel there's a shift in the gaming industry, and where the industry is heading over the next decade, and the new types of players coming to fruition. We as an industry really need to figure out how to optimize, the correlation between online and the ability of players to play remotely, not in the land-based facilities, and then how to utilize that land-based facility and the player databases, and how to bridge the two to create 1 + 1 = 3. And I think, from my perspective, the traditional operators, land-based operators in the United States and Canada and internationally have such an advantage. And now I think you see them now really looking for ways to optimize that. As Interblock, our job is to continue to innovate and pull players onto the casino floor when they enter the facilities. But now we're looking, as everybody, to take our content and also put it online, so that when people do leave the land-based facility and are part of a particular player club, they can find the same content, recognize it, and continue to remain loyal and play, whether it be a brand or a product, remotely, whether it be on a handheld device or a computer. So that's kind of what I meant, is that we all need to be thinking about, the positives, the negatives, a SWOT analysis relative to online wagering entering North America, and how do we use the advantages that we've created over decades as an industry, to not only protect what we've created, but to grow it.
Yeah, absolutely. That leads on. That leads me on to sort of my next question quite naturally. And you've been in the industry a while. A couple of things I wanted to ask. One is this shift that you talk about. Is it the biggest kind of shift, or one of the biggest shifts, kind of in terms of disrupting the industry, that you may have seen? And also, obviously, Interblock, you mentioned kind of the ambitions to look at online content. What are your kind of goals, or certainly how are you planning to go about this in 2022?
Yeah, I would say for us as Interblock, absolutely looking to go into the online space. I've been hesitant over the past few years, simply because the organic growth of our company, the infrastructure, we were very focused on, obviously sustaining the market leading position we have on the ETG side and the traditional land-based. And there's just been so many new ideas and concepts that we've come up with that we needed to execute on, and quite frankly, scale the company and build a big enough foundation globally to support that demand. But now, looking forward and seeing what's going on, it's a natural progression to take that infrastructure, that brand recognition, certain play actions, IP that we've created, and bring that to the online space. I think we'd be foolish not to. And we're finally at a point, I believe, as a company, where we've built a big enough foundation and infrastructure we can handle two paths simultaneously, without jeopardizing quality or that growth momentum we're seeing.
Certainly, yeah. We've talked plenty about North America already, and rightly so, as you say, booming market. But looking more internationally, I think it was a notable achievement this year, partnership with Holland Casino. What aims does Interblock have kind of on a global scale?
Yeah, we continue. I mean, we're investing heavily right now, whether it be Asia Pacific, Latin America, Europe. We are, across the board, double-digit growth in our infrastructure and hiring. The challenging part is to try to obviously time, resource allocation to market openings, and momentums. COVID, it's a challenge to say the least. But we are coming out with several new products in the coming months that are designed to address demand in places such as Latin America or Asia Pacific. Unique products, whether it be for Asia, Sickbo, and various forms of baccarat, for a predominantly Asian demographic and product offering, to new forms of roulette, which tends to be the predominant product demand in Latin America. So infrastructure, it continues to increase. Product offerings throughout each region will continue to expand, and from that, we'll begin to then, as I said, across the board, depending on the region of the world, see how we can take that same, best practices in the land-based side and evolve that into a more online type of offering.
Yeah, that all sounds certainly like you've got a lot happening in 2022, but it sounds like big plans, and I'm sure you can't wait really to welcome the year. I think a final question for you to round up, because we've talked about a lot of great stuff, and thanks for all your analysis and answers so far. In a word or a phrase, how would you sum up 2021, and how would you sum up what you're hoping for next year?
That's a great question. 2021, word or phrase. It was just, it was surprising. I think when everybody came out of the holidays last year, hard to believe we're entering into them again now. The year flew by, but I think we all came out of the holidays, with a little bit of concern and skepticism as to where we were going to end up this year. And looking back, I think most people would say, wow, it's much, much better than we would have anticipated in a very positive way. And I think it shows the resilience of the industry, and obviously the player demand for this segment, I think, is incredible. I think it accelerated. One of the exciting things for me is I think it accelerated so many areas of gaming we've talked about for years at a much, much faster pace than would have happened without COVID. In many conversations I have, people were anticipating to be where we are today 3-4 years from now. So I think that's also incredibly motivating and exciting, and is creating a ton of opportunity for all of us. And I foresee a lot more M&A activity to come in the next 12 months because of all this, positive momentum and the economic environment of a lot of these companies right now being so strong in the banking sector and on Wall Street. So I think we're entering, despite unfortunately seeing COVID, affect, a lot of the international markets again in a very serious way. I think the good news is that the industry is very diversified in many aspects globally. And because of that, we're going to continue to see significant investments, significant strides forward, perhaps at a faster rate than we've seen in the past couple decades, which is very, very exciting.
Yeah, I can certainly agree. John, thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.